We have got a long break. I don't know what the hell Dana UFC is doing. They do it every year, but they need to actually get these fights going. Take a page out of the book of Ryzen and actually do a New Year's Eve event. It'd be very nice, but it doesn't matter because I have some breakdowns coming at you so we can actually bide our time looking at research, maybe think about some possible bets as soon as these damn fights come in. Without further ado, we have a nice little really fun banger here. I'm sure you've heard of it already. Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. I'm going to cut to the chase here and tell you exactly who I think is winning. I'm going to break it down, right? What are the strengths, what are the advantages in this matchup? Who I think is going to win, and some props, like if it's going to go over 1.5 rounds, if it's, likely to go end by KO. So who's more likely to win? Obviously, look, well, let's just talk about this. First of all, why would you pick Paddy? Well, there's some good reasons why. It's obvious here. Look, he's got youth and momentum on his side, right? I mean, he's 30. He's in his prime now. And, so he's obviously younger, which is a big advantage a lot of times in these fights, especially at the lighter weight classes. If you're not heavyweight or whatever, or even light heavyweight or even middleweight, typically, being younger is going to help you a lot. And, I think, it's obviously he's been on a nice little tear here. He's been improving, multi-fight win streak. I mean, we kind of look at that, and so he's getting that experience in the UFC. He's cut his teeth in the UFC. He's showing that he is a legit fighter, obviously, right? And of course, the obvious path to victory here, submission and grappling skills, they got to favor him. I mean, he has a strong grappling base, high submission rate. I mean, it's like approximately, in my notes here, it says 43% sub rate. So, no submissions. And of course, a black belt in BJJ. That's obviously his best path to victory here. I mean, just get this to the mat and, just try sub Gaethje, which I'm sure that prop's going to be really juiced, but I mean, it's a good thing to look into. Another thing I want to talk about is actually his versatility. I think, because he's actually mixing his striking. I mean, I know he's kind of relying on his chin a lot, but his actually has been getting better, his striking, and especially he knows his bread and butter is going to be the grappling, but he can actually try to use the striking to mix it in there. And, he's a big guy, dude. I mean, you see him, we've all seen the memes. He blows up out of camp, so it's a lot he's got a, actually solid frame. He just cuts off all that fat, and he's kind of big for the division, so that can really help him here. Now let's talk about some red flags, or some challenges that he could face. Maybe some reasons that you might want to fade him. Maybe obviously the defense and the stand-up. It's we got to talk about that. I mean, he's like his striking defense is always going to have holes. I think he's gotten better. Like his offense has gotten a little slicker, so his offense can help his defense. But I mean, obviously he's going to absorb a lot of significant strikes, and you do not want to do that against someone like Gaethje. I mean, obviously it's just a bad thing to do. So I mean, who knows? It'd be interesting Gaethje to win by KO. I mean, if the props are juicy, I mean, you almost kind of have to. I mean, they say Scousers don't get knocked out, but I mean, you can't just be relying on that chin all the time, man. I mean, it's going to crack eventually. Now let's talk about some advantages for Gaethje here. Now, I mean, he's obviously got the power and he's got the experience here. I mean, he's got one of the highest KO ratios in MMA for a reason. I mean, he's a highlight Gaethje. I mean, right? I mean, most wins by KO, and he's got like a lot of years of experience here. I mean, that's a big thing, man. We've seen it, man. 2025 was the year of the Unks, man. The Unks still got it meme. These guys that are just proving people wrong. This is really Paddy Pimblett's toughest test, I would say. But let's also talk about the challenges that Gaethje is going to have to face here. I mean, we're not talking about his age. We're talking about the wear and tear. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. With all that experience comes a lot of injuries, a lot of wear and tear. I mean, he's 37 at this point, at this lighter weight class. Not a good thing. It's a disadvantage really, with all that wear and tear that you got. I mean, and I think also the ground game too. I would talk about that. I think it's obviously Paddy Pimblett's going to be the better grappler here, and just because he got dominated by Khabib, of course, that was just a bad matchup for him, obviously. And Paddy Pimblett's no Khabib, but still the submission threat is there. Now, to cut to the chase, who do I think is going to win, and how often do they win? I would say Pimblett wins this maybe 55 to 60% of the time. I think it's not like it's going to be like just all the time. But I mean, I think the odds are depending. We'll see how they go. But I mean, I think anything from that 60% range, I think, is a decent the odds to go on. I mean, I don't think Pimblett should be anything like a minus 600 or some crazy stuff like that. But I think around the range, he's a decent bet. Gaethje winning, I think 40-45% chance. So if you look at the implied odds and you see they're really juicy, get juicier on Gaethje by the time this fight comes to fruition, I do think Gaethje could be a good dog. But you just got to look up at the odds, guys, implied odds. Is it worth it or not? Now let's talk about props here. So let's talk about, of course, my favorite prop here, over 1.5 rounds. Does it go over 1.5 rounds? Now, more likely than not, just to cut to the chase, right? And and the reason for this is because I think Pimblett, look, he tends to work strategically early on, right? I mean, he's not just going to go out there and just throw haymakers. He's going to try to find his range, especially against someone like Gaethje. He's going to find that range, and he's going to probably try to set up some grappling here. So that first round's probably going to go past. Be very interesting, very high, very tense first round, I think. But they're going to, fill each other up. And Gaethje, I think, he's had early finishes, obviously, but he can also go into these, long, drawn-out wars, especially if they survive that first round. I think Paddy's going to try to survive it, try to really kind of setting up, see his range, see how he's going to get a takedown. I could actually see it go over 0.5 rounds, and maybe, Pimblett tries to set up a submission or something, or maybe, when it gets wild, after that they kind of find each other's timing and the range, and, they start going back and forth, and it becomes bloody, and someone gets TKO'd or something. So, yeah, I think 60 to 65% of the time, I think, usually it's going to go over 1.5 rounds, more often than not, right? Like I said, just to sum up again, Gaethje, he's tricky, wild entries, he's going to try, he's an educated brawler in a way. And Pimblett's actually a mix of, his MMA game with the range there. I think it's more likely going to go over 1.5 rounds, interesting stuff. Now let's talk about the KO prop. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. It's not a lock or anything, obviously, it's just a prop. It's going to be plus money. But I think there's value there for sure because, Gaethje still got that power, man. And it's a real threat, I think, to him. I mean, anytime he lands clean, it could really, I don't care. I know Pimblett has that, that scouser chin, whatever, but you don't want to be testing yourself like that. I think I could see him getting cocky. He absorbs a lot. I could see him maybe land something and Gaethje starting to get wobbled. And as soon as Gaethje does start to get wobbled, I think he could either crumble or, he could actually, he might just wake up. It's like some fighters are like that. It's like, you've activated my trap card, I want you to get hit. Like Oliveira, it's kind of like that. It's famously like that too. Once they get hit, they kind of, they kind of throw caution to the wind and they start landing their own. And Pimblett can be countered, man. So I think one of these guys could actually get stung. And so it's something to sprinkle on. Just to look at it. I think, maybe 35% of the time or 35% of the time or something like that. So if the odds are really juicy, if the implied odds are like something like, oh, this only happens 20% of the time or whatever, sprinkle on that KO prop. Fight ends by KO or even Paddy by KO or Gaethje by KO, depending on the odds. I think it's good. Now, of course, let's talk about submission. I think there's definitely a good possibility here but it's going to come from Pimblett, obviously. So you'd have to just kind of go with Pimblett by sub. It's his most realistic path to victory. I think try to get that submission success, try to get the grappling going, and try to like leak it. Put something in, like lock in something, man. So he's got a good submission rate, and Gaethje's, like I said, his ground defense is obviously has been exploited, and I think that's obvious. No hot takes there. I think 25 to 30% of the time, I think. Actually, I feel like the KO is more likely, in a weird way, more likely to happen just because, both fighters can get done. And with the submission prop, it's going to be, it's either Pimblett lands by submission or not. It'd be just for a meme, just be funny. I think, if you want to go with Justin Gaethje by submission, that's not going to happen. But that'd be fun if the odds are crazy. It's kind of just for fun. I don't know, degenerate little sprinkle. Because could you imagine like Gaethje just like starts landing on him? And Pimblett actually starts getting in trouble, and he goes for a takedown or something, right? And then, freaking Gaethje locks in a guillotine or something. You know what I mean? Crazier stuff has happened. I'm just saying, dude, if that hits, then, man, I don't know, man. That's crazy. What the hell? I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket if I start hitting that stuff, man. Anyway, and let's talk about the other prop here by decision. It's possible. It's definitely possible. Obviously, both fighters, they've shown they can go longer. They've been, 5-round fights before, and like I said, Gaethje has been in drawn-out wars, and obviously Pimblett has used his grappling to actually help him to go get a decision win. So I think, but even that one too, I feel like it's any one of these almost is like they don't differ in probability so much. I think so. I have to look at the odds. I think fight goes to decision, I think is kind of a fun one to sprinkle on too. You just have to, when the odds come out, let's look at that. What is submission? What is KO? What is go the distance or by decision? Did I say that again? Okay, yeah. KO, submission, or decision. You have to look at the props. Look at the odds there. Okay, anyway. So let's just talk about this now. So I think with this one, we're going to break down the basic likelihood of these different paths to victory. So with Gaethje just winning by any means, like doesn't matter, sub, just money line. Okay, guys, I think 55 to 60% of the time he does it. Gaethje to win by just his money line, I think it's like 40, 45% of the time. So slight dog there. Really, over 1.5 rounds, like I said, 60 to 65% of the time, I think it does hit. Actually, I like that one. And by KO, I think 30, 35. Did I say that right? 30, 35% of the time, yeah. And yeah, submission, I think maybe slightly less, just like because Pimblett's probably the only one's going to get a submission if there is one. And so that's why it's like slightly less, I think 25, 30% of the time maybe. And by decision, I actually almost feel like it's somewhere in between that. it's like more like a decision more likely than a submission win. But actually, I feel like it's almost like it's just as much as the KO. Actually, yeah, never mind. Sorry, 30 to 35% of the time, I think it could go to decision. So it's either, you know what I mean? I think so. I just feel like there's not really a strong read on these either way. Either way you're going with this, it's almost like there's logic behind it. Obviously, that's my full-on breakdown of the Gaethje versus Pimblett fight. Please sub and like and all that stuff. Let me know if you're tailing or fading this. If you like which ones of these props you liked and all that. And yeah, keep it here.